So just before we get started, key concept, autism is not a behavioral disorder. And this is extremely important because 99% of the time, that's exactly how it's treated. Okay. We can say, how can we eliminate this behavior and train our child to do something else? The reality is autism is a social relational disorder, and every behavior that your child exhibits is just a symptom. So trying to distinguish the behaviors doesn't address the actual autism. So take an example, let's say your child has an itch and they're scratching their arm, and you're like, hey, stop scratching. Okay, doesn't work. So you're like, hey, tie their arm behind their back. Not saying you do that. Doesn't stop. You just keep repeating over and over. And then you look down and you're like, oh, you have a mosquito bite on your arm. That's easy. Let me just put a little ointment on there. And then the itching goes away. And I think that's the way that most people approach autism, is they say, let's treat the symptoms, let's keep the scratching and not, find out what the cause is. So my method goes one step deeper to treat the disorder from the inside out. Now, kids are not typically born with autism. They're developing normally and they're going along. And then one day there's a tipping point where development stops and sometimes even goes backwards. And I believe that there's many things that cause a tipping point. Some people, just point to vaccines and just say, that's the cause. I'm not 100% sold out on that. I know that there's ingredients and things inside vaccines that cause issues, but I think that's one of many potential tipping points. Okay. So just a quick lesson in common scenario that we see all the time. The most powerful antioxidant in the human body is something called glutathione. And think about it like a Roomba vacuum in your body that's going around and flushing out free radicals and toxins. And then you go to the doctor, you get a vaccine, and they tell you, okay, give your child Tylenol for the fever. Here's the interesting thing about Tylenol, which the active ingredient is called acetaminophen, is that Tylenol stops your body's ability to produce glutathione. So it's kind of like dumping sand all over your house and then taking that battery out of the Roomba. And you're basically creating this toxic pool in the body and brain at the exact same time. You need a deep clean to remove the things from the vaccines, which could very well cause a tipping point. So in autism anyway, low levels of glutathione, that's very typical, which means that our children have an even tougher time removing toxins from their body. So we want to be able to eliminate things that add to that dysfunction. So do yourself a favor and just remove acetaminophen completely and find alternatives. Ibuprofen, it has its downside in terms of the damage that it does to the gut, but in terms of like damage that is caused with autism, just take whatever Tylenol you have and throw it out. Studies have even shown that boys with prenatal acetaminophen exposure were more likely to get clinical symptoms of autism. And the more exposure they got, the worse it got. So it's not a good thing. Okay, another key concept here is that gut dysfunction is very typical in autism. And since our gut, and we're going to go into detail next week on what that is, but since our gut makes up 70% of our immune system, and some estimates it's up to 80%, our environment and food toxin can easily push a compromised immune system over the edge. So on one hand, you have excess toxins in our food environment, and then you have compromised immunity with gut dysfunction and low glutathione levels, and it creates this toxic environment that the body can't deal with. And so what happens is all of the body's energy goes into self-preservation and not growth, which can cause that tipping point. So our goal here over this entire time is to help heal the gut, clear that cloud of inflammation and neurotoxicity so that our children can begin to develop going forward again.